I started getting callbacks when I changed my name. I'm like, what? So all this time, it was just my name? One of the things I think that happened was my name was basically giving me away that I am strongly of African descent. Hi there, I'm Alia. I make videos on tech, career, productivity, and life. And today I'm going to talk about life. Life as an international student, what my experience has been, just the process of me getting here from my home country, my experience with just the culture, the people here at uni, and all that good stuff. I'll also talk about life after uni and what the various options are, and basically my final thoughts about everything. So let's get right into the video. To study in Australia as an international student, you would need a student visa. And this process varies from country to country, but today I'll be specifically talking about my experience with my own country, which is Nigeria in West Africa. For more details on your country, you'll have to visit their website to get the things that are specific to your needs. So for me, I felt like the process was quite lengthy and just a lot, given that you wouldn't be doing an actual Australian interview. There isn't an Australian embassy in Nigeria, and the applications go to the embassy in South Africa. And I'll explain more about this, why I say it's not very straightforward. But first things first, let's talk about choosing a school and a state that you want to live in. For me, I chose Melbourne because I wanted a state that is culturally diverse and has other international students like me, a place I felt like I would fit in better. When it also came to choosing schools, I was focusing on schools that are top 30 and are more recognized in the state or country. I also wanted a school that has a good alumni network. I think that all this kind of plays to you getting a job or getting connections or building your network after school. Another thing to do is to look for schools that offer scholarships. So my school, when I was applying, offered me 25% scholarship. They give you this based on your GPA or just other factors that they might consider beneficial to them. If you can get a cut from your tuition, get that, because tuition as an international student is quite heavy and you have to pay upfront for your semesters here. So you don't have the liberty of getting a student loan like local students. So these are things that you have to keep in mind when you're searching for a school. One thing I would say is to be very careful of clauses attached to some scholarships, especially governmental ones, because most times they require you to go home right after your study. And if you're like me that want some sort of work experience, or if you're planning to stay here afterwards, it's not really possible. You'd have to go back to your own country before you can apply to re-enter the country. And if you decide to stay regardless and not go back, some of the scholarships require you to pay back everything that they have paid for you. So be very careful about the clauses attached to them. After choosing your school and the state that you want to be in, the next thing, of course, is applying for the course that you have chosen as well. Some of the schools may not offer the course that you want. You might really have to look through a few schools to get to the one that offers the thing that you want to study. One thing you should keep in mind when looking to courses is the fact that some of these courses are on the skilled occupation list, meaning that you would have an edge if you plan to stay here afterwards. Most of these courses are usually IT based or health science based. There's a whole list for the list of occupations that the country, Australia, is willing to grant visas, permanent residency visas afterwards. So I will put the link in the description. If you want to check it out, you can see the full list, and maybe that would give you an idea of what courses are more beneficial. So another part of the process is getting your admission and accepting it. When you get an admission letter from your uni, you would need to accept by paying a tuition upfront. This tuition is usually your first term tuition. So that's what I'm saying, like life as an international student is hardcore because everything is upfront and it's really expensive. So this is another thing to keep in mind when you're applying, because sometimes it might be hard to rely on the scholarships even before you come in here, because some of the scholarships might be for people that are already studying as opposed to people that are still trying to get in. When you accept your admission letter, you then get your confirmation of enrollment. Your COE is very important. It's the one proof that you have any business in Australia as a student, and you use this for a lot of other things that you'll be doing in your process. Then now the visa application starts. For this, you're required to file a whole bunch of documents, two of which include your bank statement and your statement of purpose. The bank statement is basically a statement of account from a bank showing that you or someone with a relationship to you has enough to cover your expenses in the period of time that you'll be studying and living in Australia. Then your statement of purpose is your reason for coming here, your why. I'd advise anyone to take some time and do some research and read other people's statement of purpose and basically figure out a good way to outline all your points and a compelling reason for coming here. The one thing you shouldn't do is mention that you have plans of staying in Australia afterwards, because just don't do it. And I was told not to, because at the end of the day, you're coming in as a student. And the best picture to paint is that you're coming here to gain knowledge and certain skills that you're going to take back to your home country to develop your own country. So yeah, don't mention you're staying here. When submitting your documents, make sure they're all very clear. And if you have any documents that may be unclear, try to clarify it immediately while submitting with a note or another document. The reason for this is that when you submit your application, since there is no visa interview, they will try to process your visa in the normal time it takes, using the information that you have given them. And if some of your information are incomplete, they don't immediately send you back an email asking for more information. They still take the normal period for processing your visa to get back to you. And you'd realize that by the time they are getting back to you, instead of you getting a notification that your visa has been granted, you will be getting a request for more information. This happened to me, so it ended up taking twice the amount of time for my visa to be processed, and I had to defer my admission to the next semester. This is why I said it's not very straightforward, because if you don't know what information you're missing, you can end up going back and forth with them for months. So now let's jump into the experience. What is life like coming here, living here, schooling here? First off, Australia is so far from everywhere. Basically, I took a 26-hour flight from Nigeria to here. So keep that in mind. It's kind of on its own from the rest of the world. Now I know why they call it the world down under. It is far from everywhere, so keep that in mind. I went through the Dubai route, which was a 6-hour flight to Dubai, and then a 6-hour layover over at Dubai, and a 14-hour flight from Dubai to Melbourne. So come prepared, get comfortable, cozy, prepare your mind, you're going to be flying for a while. So now we're finally in Australia. We've flown a 26-hour torture flight. The next thing is the living situation. I live in a shared house with 2 housemates who are absolutely the best. And moving here, I was thinking about living in a student housing. Because one thing is when you're looking for accommodation from Overseas, you just, these student housing and the lofts and the nice places for students, it just keeps popping into your eye. So I was looking for that, and I was leaning towards going with student housing, which I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I hear from a few people that you can get really isolated and quite lonely sometimes. One thing I'd say is, before moving here, do not commit to the student dorms or student housing off campus. My friends were living in a student housing complex, and I tell you that the whole apartment was just a wee bit bigger than my room alone. The whole apartment. And it was just so expensive. They were paying twice what I'm currently paying. And they ended up moving out of the place after their lease expired. It was so hard to do that because they were already locked into that agreement. My advice to anyone is, don't sign anything until you're here and you've seen the place and you're sure that that's what you want to commit to. If you're paying monthly and you can pack up anytime, that's great, but that's also very rare because they make you sign some sort of agreement, like I said. One thing you can do is to start looking for places to rent before you get here. You can use sites like Flatmates. This is not sponsored, I wish. When you found enough places that you want to rent, don't just commit until you have seen the place. You can come in here first, get an Airbnb for a week. During that week, use that for inspections and look around for the places that you'd like to live in. And then you can commit to something. So now let's talk about life at uni. The first thing they make you go to when you get here is orientation. This orientation, as much as a lot of people might not want to go, is something I advise that people go to. Because during orientation, you get the plug to all the things that you would possibly need. And these include the resources, the contact of the people that can help you, your health insurance, the academic learning group people that can help you get through your assignments and assessments. They also give out free concessions depending on your own school and what they're offering. Most of these things you wouldn't find out about if you don't go for orientation, so it's something that you shouldn't take for granted. Also, have a core reason why you chose to migrate to study, because that way you can cite all the better opportunities when they come. The thing is, there are a lot of opportunities here, but you don't see them unless you look. And if you have a vision or some sort of mental vision board of your goals for traveling all this way, you can kind of have it figured out and get on track with things faster than if you're still trying to figure out your base. Everyone's pace is different, everyone's journey is different, and if you're still figuring out yourself, that's great. But it's also good to have some sort of direction of the way you want your time abroad to go. Now, jumping into social life. Here in Melbourne, the people are generally nice, I would say, and culturally diverse, which I love. There's a whole array of places to go, things to see, but keep in mind, you're not on a 2-year tourist adventure. School would literally bombard you with so many assessments and tests that there'll be barely any time to focus on other things or just, have this social life that you're dreaming about when you get here. But social life, yes, there is if you want to, but there's this international student and local student division. I don't know what it is, but it's there. Maybe it's because of my course of study, but there weren't many local students in my class, and I was really practicing my Australian slangs only for me to, not even meet any local students. I was just hoping to get more, of the Australian culture and the vibe and stuff like that. If you want to socialize in school, it's a little bit of an issue here because a lot of students don't live on campus. They end up going back to their parents' home or whichever area, and I'm guessing that most of their friends come from that area. It's usually just come in, take your classes, and bounce. So there's not much of a social life option at school. But outside of school, maybe in Melbourne, and maybe friends that you have made from other things, Yes, but in school, none per se. Another thing is that the international students tend to stick to their own groups, and I think this is because there are a lot of Indians and Chinese here, and they may not necessarily be fluent in English, so they tend to stick to their own group where, you know, it's an easy conversation, at least from what I've seen. For me, that I'm not necessarily in that group of international students, you tend to be on the outside looking in. A good way to socialize though is by going for meetups. I went to a lot of tech meetups, and I'd say that that helped me socialize more here in Melbourne, especially when I didn't know a lot of people. Not that I still know a lot of people now, but you know what I mean. When I came newly and I was just fresh in the country and I didn't have friends here, so I went to these meetups and I met people there and built my own network, both personally and professionally. Another experience I want to talk about is trying to get a job here. As a student in Australia, you can work part-time. When I got here, it took me quite a few months before I could land a part-time job. I remember sending out my resume to different places in retail, hospitality, and the likes of them, and I wouldn't get a call back, and I'm thinking, what is the issue? It's the hardest thing for international student because one of the things I think that happened was my name was basically giving me away that I am strongly of African descent. So I would not get callbacks. I don't know what it was. I struggled with this for a very long time. And so one day I decided, you know what? Okay, let me try something new. I decided to change my name on my resume to my middle name. So for those that don't know, my full name is Chiamaka, and Chi is short for Chiamaka. I changed my name to Jennifer, which is my middle name. And the only thing sadder than me not getting the call back all those times was the fact that I started getting callbacks when I changed my name. I'm like, what? So all this time, it was just my name? But you know what? I took it. I had to just take it. And then I went for the interviews, but I never got one. Was it me? Was I giving off something? I don't know. But I really struggled getting a part-time job. A good thing to do during this period of job hunting is to really utilize LinkedIn. I've said this in my previous video. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. And also to apply to jobs in your school. So a lot of unis, they have vacancies for students that are targeting the student cohort. Most times you're going to be able to get those ones easily compared to trying to apply outside of uni. Now let's move on to life after uni and what are your options. After studying here in Australia, you have an option to either go back home if you want to, or apply for the post-study stream visa. This gives you full access to live and work here full-time, and the visa usually goes from about 2 to 4 years depending on what you have studied. If you've done a doctorate, it's different. If you've done a normal master's, it's different. If you've done a bachelor's, it's different. So based on what you have studied, they will give you a range of, your post-study visa can go anywhere between 2 to 4 years. So for me, I just finished my 2 years course of study. I did my master's degree and I just recently finished. And the one thing I did was I started applying for a place of work before I even graduated, so that way you don't feel stuck after school, or you don't spend months trying to find a job or trying to get into the industry. And so my internship is basically transitioning to full-time role as a software engineer. And now for my final thoughts and everything. So I think that my experience here has been one of a kind, because I just think that everybody's experience is different. There are so many factors that can affect what you come across here in your time here in Australia. And that would include where you're living, which state you decide to live in, which school you're studying at, the course you're studying, the people you meet. So there's so many factors that would really determine your experience here. And I just think that at the end of the day, whatever you do, kind of have a little bit of an idea of what you want to get out of your migration to Australia. And I would just say to enjoy the process. It's a long way from home, and if you are picking up your life to move here, just enjoy the process. That even if you don't have it figured out and you're overwhelmed by just moving away from home or moving away from your comfort zone, don't be too hard on yourself. Enjoy your experience while you're here and relish in the culture and the people that you meet. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to catch me on my social media, ask me those questions, or just drop the questions in the comment below and I'll be sure to answer them to the best of my ability. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's it. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.